All right, so we're going to get into looking at absolute value functions today. Okay, so this is section 2-2, and I'm going to go through just what an absolute value function is, and then we'll do number 1. And then in part 2 of the video, we will look at the back side of this. So this is page 42 and 43 in your notes, or section 2-2 in your notebook in Canvas, if you want to look it up that way. Okay, so we're going to talk about absolute value functions today, and an absolute function, an absolute value function is written as f of x equals the absolute value of x. Okay, so the absolute value symbol just represents a distance, and that's all absolute value is the distance the number is from 0 on a number line. So a lot of people will say the absolute value is always positive because distances are always positive. Okay, so it says complete the table below to graph the function, give the domain and range. So here are the values they've already made for x, and over here these will be your y values or your absolute values of x. So what we're going to do is we're going to take f of x equals the absolute value of x, and wherever we see a specific value, what we're going to do is we're going to plug that in. So all of these x values, we're going to plug them in for x. So I'm going to find what f of -3 is. I'm going to find what f of 0 is. I'm going to find what f of +3 is. Obviously, there's more in there. I should have wrote them all in there, but we're going to find all of these on the list. But I'm hoping just at least on this one, you'll see what it does, and then we can kind of fill them in and not do everything on it. Okay, so like I said, if you need me, come into the live stream, ask me. I'll go through all of those a little bit more in detail if that's what you need. So in for x, we're going to put -3. What is the absolute value of -3? The absolute value of -3 is +3. So this turns out to be +3. We're going to put 0 into this one. What's the absolute value of 0? The absolute value of 0 is 0. On this one, we're going to put +3 in there, in for x. So the absolute value of +3 is also 3. So the absolute value doesn't change its sign. What it does is it gives us a distance. Okay, because sometimes kids will get mistakes, and we'll see this where kids think the absolute value of +3 is -3. That's not what it's doing. It's just asking us what is that distance away, and this is 3 spaces away, and this is also 3 spaces away. So the absolute value represents a distance. So as hopefully you can see in the pattern in our table, if I were to use -2, what is the absolute value of -2? It would be +2. If I put -1 in here, what's the absolute value of -1? +1. Okay, if I put 1 in here, the absolute value of 1 is 1, the absolute value of 2 is 2. So there's my table. That's why I didn't write them all out. And all we're going to do is we're going to look at graphing that. So I'm going to slide this over so you guys can look at that. And now what we're going to do is we're going to graph this. So we're going to graph these just like points. So remember, if it's negative, we're going to go to the left 3, and these two numbers give us 1 dot, and you're always going to start from the origin. So we're going to go to the left 3, and we are going to go up 3. So to the left, 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3. There's our first dot. So we have now graphed that first dot. The second dot goes to the left 2 and up 2. So to the left 2 and up 2. The third dot goes to the left 1 and up 1. 0, 0 is right in the center. 1, 1 means go to the right 1 and up 1. 2-2 means go to the right 2 and up 2. And 3, 3, remember these are together, that's why I'm circling them, because these two numbers make 1 dot. So go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, up 1, 2, 3, there's your dot. What do you notice that it does? This absolute value makes a V shape. Okay, so the absolute value function makes a V-shape graph. The absolute value makes a V-shape graph. So underneath it, right here, and I just wrote it above there, but it says the graph looks like a V. Value. Value starts with V. That's how I remember it. Absolute value is going to look like a V shape. This dot right here, this dot is called a vertex. A vertex is a corner. So when you guys were in geometry, they talked about a vertex. A vertex is a corner of the graph. That's a corner. Okay? So the turning point is called the vertex. So what does it mean by a turning point? It means if you're following the graph and you're going this way, you turn around and you go this way. You change directions at that point. So that's what a turning point means. Okay? All right, let's look at domain and range. Okay, the domain. The domain is the left side of the graph. So the domain is all your stuff considering the x's. So what I want to look at is I want to look at the left of the graph. I want to look at the right of the graph. Okay? Now, on both sides of that, on the left and the right side, there are arrows there. So that means this graph doesn't stop. So when you tell me the domain, what you're telling me is, hey, what numbers does this graph use? What x values is this graph taking up? Well, on the left side, this graph isn't stopping on the left, and it's not stopping on the right. So on the left side, it goes forever, and a way that we say it goes forever is we say it goes to infinity. But what kind of numbers are on the left if it did keep going to the left? These are negative numbers on the left. So negative infinity would represent the left side. The right side, does it have an arrow on the right side as well? It does. So this graph would go to positive infinity. So the left side goes to negative infinity. The right side goes to positive infinity. So this graph is domain. Its domain is every number, everything. So sometimes we can also write it. This is one way to write the domain. Another way you can write the domain is we can say x can be every real number. Okay? You don't have to write both things. It's just that's how we can do, when we look at it, that's how we can write one or the other. Okay, range. So when you think domain, I want you to think left and right side of the graph. So look at the left, look at the right side, figure out where is it going or stopping. Is it stopping? Does it keep going? If it would have stopped over here, you would have told me the x value it stops at. Okay, so when I look at the range, with the range, you're going to look at the bottom of the graph, and you're going to look at the top of the graph. So those are the two things we're going to look at with range. So over here, I'm going to take this purple pin that I just marked with. I'm going to go over to the graph. I'm going to mark the bottom point of my graph. Do you agree that this is the bottom part of the graph? And would you agree that this is the top part of the graph? So what you're going to do for range is you're going to write down where is the bottom of that graph. And remember, range is a y value. So when I say bottom, think of the y value. So the very bottom of this graph is at a y value of 0. So we're going to say the range is at 0. And if it goes to 0, we're going to put a bracket around it. Look at the top of the graph. The top of the graph is up here. What does the top of the graph have on it? I see arrows. So that means the graph's not stopping. It means it should keep going. So just because you see it physically stop here, it has arrows on the end. That means it's going to keep going. So then if it has arrows on that, that means it keeps going. So the top keeps going, so we're going to say that graph goes to infinity. So the range goes from 0 to infinity. Another way to say that, that's one answer. You can write it this way. Or another way you can say that is to say y is what? All your y values are above 0. So they could be greater than or equal to 0. There are two ways to write the domain and range. Actually, one's interval notation and one's inequality notation. Okay, but there's two ways to write those. Okay, so one or the other. I'm fine with both. Doesn't matter to me. Okay, all right. So when you guys graph, as you can see here in your notes, it says graphing by table. It says to create a table of values, it's best to place the vertex in the middle, then include values on both sides. Okay, so you've got to include the vertex. Must. Okay, you've got to have the vertex. So when you are graphing, you need to use the vertex. It's the middle. Whenever you draw a V, you have to have that middle. And we're graphing this, so I can't just have one side or the other. So we got to have the vertex. Okay, so it says find the x value of the vertex. Set the expression of the inside equal to 0. So what we're going to do is we're going to find where the inside equals 0, and we're going to put that in the middle of our table, and then we're going to graph it. Okay, so here's your 3 steps. Okay, inside equals 0, put that in the middle of your table and graph it. So I'm going to graph number 1, and that'll be part 1 of this video, and then we'll go look at any odds that you may need on the back. And then if you want evens, make sure, talk to me, come ask questions. Okay, so here's number 1. So we want to make the inside 0. So I need you to ask yourself, this says x minus 4. Remember, x is like fill in the blank. I want to make the inside equal 0. And that's going to tell us what's the first number we're going to use. So what number minus 4 would give us 0 back? What minus 4 equals 0? What does x have to be? Do you agree that 4 minus 4 is 0? If you do agree with that, then 4 is your middle number. Whatever makes the inside 0, that's going to be your middle number. So when we go to the table and there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dots, 4 will be your middle. Okay, how did I get that? Make the inside 0. Make whatever's inside the brackets equal to 0. We put 4 in there. 4 minus 4 is 0. That's what we're going to use. Okay. All right, what numbers do you pick around it? Kids, you're smart. Just go in order. 4, 5, 6, 7, 3, 2, 1. Look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But this was the number that we had to find first. Get my R and my I in there first. Why? Because it's your vertex. The V shape, to make it a V shape, it's got to be at that point. It's got to be at that little spot in the middle where you guys go down and bounce back up. Okay? Everything after that, you're going to go back to the equation right here, and we're going to put numbers into the absolute value of x minus 4. So the absolute value of x minus 4, and what you're going to do is we're going to put numbers in there. So what is 5 minus 4? Do you agree that 5 minus 4 equals 1? What is the absolute value of 1? The absolute value of 1 is 1. When I put 5 in there, I get 1 back. What happens when you put 6 in there? 6 minus 4. 6 minus 4 is 2. The absolute value of 2 is 2. So when I put 6 in there, I get 2 back. What happens when I put 7 in there? 7 minus 4 is 3. The absolute value of 3 is 3. Okay. Now, these are going nicely in order. It won't always be that, depending on what kind of values you have with it, but I know some of you see a pattern and you instantly want to fill it in. Okay, but I want to show you what goes on with the left side and the right side. So I want to bring over a post-it real quick, and we're going to find out the numbers that are on the left side of this. So we are still going to use the absolute value of x minus 4, and we're going to plug in 1, 2, 3. Oh, I guess I forgot to plug in 4, but we already know what it's going to be, but I'll show you that here in a second. So we're going to put 1 in there. Do you agree that the absolute value, well, 1 minus 4 is negative 3. The absolute value of negative 3 is positive 3. So when I put 1 in there, I got 3 back. What do you notice about the outer edges? So let's try number 2. So I'm going to do 2 minus 4. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. What is the absolute value of negative 2? It's positive 2. So when I put 2 in there, I got 2 back. Oh, what do you notice about the next 2 outer numbers? Okay. So the next number we're going to use is 3. So 3 minus 4 is negative 1. What is the absolute value of negative 1? It's positive 1. So when I put 3 in, I got 1 back. What do you notice about these numbers? Do you notice how they're both coming in to the same spot? And that's what a V shape does. Both sides come into that same dot. Now let's put 4 in there. Kids, you already know what 4 is going to be. Young adults, whatever you want me to refer to you as. Old adults, people. 4 minus 4 is 0. Absolute value is 0 is 0. So there is our table. We've got a table of values. I'm taking that post-it away. Why? Because I need to graph it. So here we go. Just like what we did above, you guys already know that 2 points make 1 dot. So I'm going to go to the right one and up 1, 2, 3. I'm going to go to the right 2, 1, 2, and up 2. I'm going to go to the right 3, 1, 2, 3, and up 3. I'm going to go to the right 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and not move up or down any. I'm going to go to the right 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and up 1. I'm going to go to the right 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and up 2. Do you see how we're bouncing back up? And we're going to go to the right 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and up 1, 2, 3. And there are, as my ink dies a little bit in my pen, there are the two sides of the graph. Do you see as this side came down, it got here, and then it bounced back up? It made a V shape. And there's your absolute value graph. Okay? All right, last part of that says domain and range at the bottom. Let's do that. Domain is left and right side. So here's the left, here's the right. What do you see on the left and the right? I see arrows. Arrows mean it doesn't stop. So if it doesn't stop, we can say it goes from negative infinity to positive infinity. Remember what we just talked about up here. Okay? If you don't remember that, scroll back and listen to that. Okay? Domain is the left side and the right side. Left side has an arrow, so it goes to negative infinity. Right side has an arrow, it goes to positive infinity. These graphs don't stop here. You don't know that they stop. The arrow means it keeps going, so you can't tell me where that graph stops because I don't know. Okay? If you want to write it instead of negative infinity, positive infinity, you could say x goes to every real number. That means x just keeps going on forever. The range is the bottom of the graph and the top of the graph. So the range, look at the bottom. Where's the bottom of the graph? The bottom of the graph is at 0. Where's the top of the graph? You don't need to put these little chunks on here. I'm just trying to show you visually. The top of the graph has arrows on it. So does the top stop? Nope. Top doesn't stop. So it goes to infinity. So there's your range. If you want to write it with inequality symbols, range is the y values. The range is y is greater than or equal to 0. Okay. All right. So there's side 1 of that. In part 2, we're going to go over the back. Okay. So if you're good with that, if you already know how to do it, then you've got the odds. But we're going to go through over 3, 5, and 7 in part 2. Okay. All right.